Hey, it's Anthony Whitaker here, and welcome to today's episode of the Grow My Salon Business podcast. Whether this is your first time tuning in or perhaps you are a regular listener, either way, it's great to have you here today. And in case you don't already know, video versions of our podcast are now also available on our YouTube channel. So if you'd like to put faces to the names, then head on over to Grow My Salon Business on YouTube, and don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel while you're there. So with that said, on with today's episode. I've always said that hairdressing is an amazing craft, and that hairdressers are craftsmen or craftswomen, and that many of them also have a creative side to them, which is often what draws them to this industry in the first place. But the term artist shouldn't be used to describe every hairdresser that there is. But occasionally you do come across hairdressers who truly are artists. They show a level of creativity that rarely separates them from the rest. Now, my guest today is one such person, Angelo Seminara, who is without a doubt an artist in the true sense of the word. In fact, I'm going to say that when it comes to hair, he is nothing short of a creative genius. So in today's podcast, we will discuss creativity, we'll talk about art, we'll talk about fashion, we'll talk about beauty, and we'll talk about the salon business, and lots more. So without further ado, welcome to the show, Angelo Seminara.
Hello, Anthony. So excited to be on this today. I've been following you and had some really beautiful, interesting podcasts. So it's great to be here.
Thank you. It's been a long time that I've wanted to get you on here, and finally today's the day. So I'm excited about it as well, and I know our listeners will be very excited to hear what you've got to say. I don't know where to start with all this. I was sort of doing a bit of research on you again before we started, just to make sure I had a good flow to the show. And, there was one thing that sort of stood out to me. And I thought, well, I'm going to ask you about that right at the beginning, because I think it breaks some sort of record. It probably breaks a law as well, actually. And it is this. You started hairdressing when you were 11. Now, that is very young. So let's just tell us about that before we get into it. Who starts hairdressing at 11?
Well, I was born in a very, very small town in the south of Italy. Like, that kind of town where everyone knows each other. It's just like a big family, if you know what I mean. And my grandmother, who's been incredible for me, it was always an inspiration, such an amazing person. She really one day called me up and said, "Hey, we need to do something with you here because you're driving my daughter absolutely bananas." And I was like, "What do you mean?" I said, "No, you're driving her crazy because, you're just going playing football. You come back like with scars." I was one of these boys that I used to do a lot of sports. So I was always into trouble with something broken or something,
Mm.
And she said, "You need to really think of doing something on the side, and maybe like perhaps during the summer, like go work experience." And she went, "Why don't you try barbershop? Because when it rains, you're under the roof. You're going to always look smart. Perfect," she went, And I said, "All right, I'll try that." So I ended up going into this little barbershop in my town. Really nice people, great boss, it was an inspiration for me too, because he was a very, very sort of like very polished, very smart, well-educated person. And so I was very lucky. From there, I got to really start to love the interaction, with people, and then to like really feel that I'm part of something important. And that was this kind of a metamorphosis that we create between ourselves and the customers, this transformation that happens in the mirror, and you can see their face changing at the end of the service, and I really like that. I think that's what the beginning was for me, It was a really, really interesting relationship with people.
Yeah. Were you still at school at the same time?
Yes. So I would go into school in the morning, and in the afternoon, in the afternoon, we normally we have a siesta, we have lunch like in Spain. So you have that break, and then you start at 4:00 until 8, 4 hours. So I used to go there, sweep the floor, clean up all the cupboards, change the blades on the razors, I used to cut myself a lot all the time because I was, not experienced. And at the age of 13, if you want to know this story, because it's quite funny, not funny, interesting.
Yeah, definitely.
This guy walks into the salon and he goes like, he called my boss and he said, "Hey Pasquale, do you have?" My boss was called Pasquale, and he went, "Hey Pasquale, do you have someone that could possibly come to my father's house to shave him and to cut the hair?" So Pasquale looked around because we're lots of like kids, 15, 16 people that off school, and he's like, "Can you really? Do you want to go?" And I said, "Yeah, I'll go." Okay, off you go. So I went to the house. And this guy told me, "Can you be really, really quiet because my dad is sleeping?" And I was like, "Okay, no problem." I said, so he walks me in this room. I saw this massive tall bed, and I saw this guy lying right in the middle of the bed with the face up, with the snow hat on, with a little bow, pom pom, green and yellow. And he was like, I was like, "So he's this guy?" And he went, "Yeah, it's him. He's my dad. But don't wake him up because he's sleeping." And I was like, "Okay." He was dead.
Yeah, I knew you were going
I
to
only
say that.
realized, I climbed the bed, and I think that really, it's one of these situations where, or you make it or you break into your career. It's
Yeah.
welcome to the world of what we do. So I
So,
could have just dropped everything and run away. I could
yeah.
have frozen and not be able to do anything, or I could have just done it. It's three options. There's no other option.
So
So I
did you do
went for
it?
it. Start putting. He was not funny when his teeth fall down, to be honest, because he had false teeth and they fall, and I was like, "Oh my god," not funny. Then when I cut him with the blade, there was no blood. I was like, "Wow." But he
Yeah.
was really, really cold. I felt like he
Yeah.
didn't have
Yeah.
anything, poor guy. And at the end, I just did it. I went home. My mom is like, "Why are you not eating?" And I was like, "No, I'm fine. I'm not hungry. I'm not that hungry." She was, "Come on, eat some food." It was Sunday because we
Mm,
worked on a Sunday, just half a
mm,
day in the morning.
mm.
And I just remember that I didn't eat for 2 weeks because I was still like all confused,
Yeah.
about
Wow.
what's
Yeah. Yeah.
happened.
Of course.
It
Oh
was,
my God. What a
I think,
great,
a
what a
good
story.
experience. A bad experience can be a good experience, doesn't it?
Yeah. 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 Okay. Well,
That's
that's,
fun
I've
for me.
certainly not had anyone tell me that sort of story before. I just knew you were going to say that. When you started telling the story, I thought, oh my God, he's dead. Okay. All right. Well, let's fast forward from that. That was in Italy where you started, where you grew up. And then at some point you moved to London. I'm not sure when it was that you moved to London, but I had Trevor Sorbie on the podcast about a year ago now. And he was telling me about you and how I'm not sure if we recorded this part of the conversation actually, but he was telling me about he gets a phone call from this guy, and it was you, with I'm not so sure how good your English was at the time, but basically you said you wanted to work for him, and Trevor was laughing when he was telling me the story. I'm not doing justice to it at all, but his response to you was, "Never mind, you want to work for me. I'm more concerned about how you got my phone number in the first place." But what I wanted to ask you was, what was it about Trevor? Because I know you've been working in Rome, I think, for Tony and Guy and stuff. So you obviously had, progressed a bit from where you grew up. So what was it about Trevor's genius, I suppose, that attracted you to work with him?
Well, working from 11 until 15 in a barber shop in the south of Italy, in Calabria, where I was born.
Yeah.
Then moving at the age of 15 and a half, nearly 16, to Rome, where I started working in a Tony and Guy Academy, where I did some training
Hmm.
for 3 years. I did, all the training. I always felt really confused about teachers, especially Italian teachers, because I think Italian people, without generalizing, they're very much more into a feeling, into that passion, into
Yeah.
that freestyle, more than so disciplined. Like probably, perhaps it could be someone from the UK or from other places, or from Japan, where people are a bit more methodic. They learn a technique and then they're able to repeat it, and all of that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I just felt like I needed to move on. So I went to London. I decided to go to London. So I did some trade tests in Vidal Sassoon. I remember the time it was Charlie Worthington, Nicky Clark. I wanted to taste everybody a little bit. Whatever was up there in those days that was, a really good name and good reputation, really, because I just wanted to learn and grow from there. But I always had this set mind on Trevor Sorbie because I felt like his work, he was always a little bit, it was a step further to everybody else, in my opinion, anyway. And so I said, how do I get there? Now, because when I was in Rome, I was already photographing collections, for an Italian brand. And I worked with this American photographer called Mark Avriliak. And Mark Avriliak was Trevor's photographer, which was like a coincidence. And I said, Mark, would you give me Trevor's number? Because I really want to call him. And Mark said, Angelo, why would you work with Trevor? You're brilliant. You don't need Trevor. And I was like, no, that's European. I need Trevor. I said, I think I want him to become my mentor. And so that's how it was. I called, and the first time was Trevor's wife there at the time. And she said, I'm sorry, but Trevor is not here, but who are you? And I was like, I'm Angelo Seminara, blah, 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 blah. And she went, but perhaps maybe you can call next week and I will try and arrange a meeting with you and Trevor if you want. So she was super kind, and super nice. And I said, okay, that's amazing. So then I really called him, and Trevor was like, hey, Angelo, I kind of know your work. He knew my work already because I was already being published in those years in Italy, in Rome.
Yeah.
In Estetica magazine, lots of different magazines, Zephyr, The Times, Studio, all these kind of magazines from the, trade. And so he said, come, but I won't promise you anything, It's not that you're going to get the job. You have to do what everyone else is doing. And I said, yeah, don't worry, I'll do it. So I went to London. I had a book with me that I made, handmade, with some pictures and stuff. I showed the manager, and at the time there was like Antoinette Binders there, Sally Brooks, Eugene Soleiman. I mean, just name it, all the top hairdressers, young hairdressers, they were working there. And I said, oh, this is going to be tough, but, I'll try. I'll try and go and see how it works. So I went to the supermarket because I didn't have a lot of money because I was eating like sandwiches and chili peppers, all day long. And some, drinks, because it was kind of, a decision that I had to make to leave my country and stuff. So I started from scratch. And in this supermarket, I saw that they were folding some hams, pieces of ham, vegetables into cling film, like wrapping cling film. And I thought, that would be great for the hair, to do some hairstyles, and then I'm going to wrap them with cling film, like in this supermarket. So that was my test at the beginning. And the manager and Sally Brooks, then they looked at each other and they laughed. And they said, this guy is not normal in his head or something. What is he presenting? So I did some hair wraps like French pleats or chignon or whatever. And then I just wrapped them around with some cling film, which he made it look very kind of futuristic. And they were like, yeah, we like that. So let's speak to Trevor next. Then I went and met Trevor and I asked Trevor, what is your philosophy, Trevor? And he said to me, I remember we were in the Pineapple Studio. That's where I met him the first time, in Covent Garden.
Yeah.
And he said, just make women look beautiful, Angelo. That's my philosophy. And that thing stuck in my head from day one at the age of 23. And I kind of agreed with him, that's all we do. We have to make them look beautiful. And that's it.
You said something before about the Italian way of hairdressing, that it's more feeling. And I totally agree with that. But it's feeling about making women look beautiful. And that was something I was going to ask you about later on anyway. So let's jump there right now. and ask you
Yeah.
that, because I'm always intrigued by, like, the French do it as well. French and Italian, they might be taught how to cut hair just the same as everybody else and color hair just the same as everybody else. But for you, for example, we're going to talk about your work and the sort of work you do in a minute. But no matter what you do, no matter how sort of out there it is, you still manage to make them always look beautiful. It's like the foundation that everything is built on. Would that be a fair way of saying that for you? That, like, it's the benchmark has got to be beautiful, but then after that, anything goes, so to speak. Yeah.
Yeah. I kind of always struggled in learning, and it's always been very tough for me because I have to be self-taught, with things.
Mm-hmm.
I need to kind of work out myself. So maybe some hairdressers don't know this about me, but I have to work so much harder than all the other people, that they do. They understand things quick.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why, but I need to work it out myself, because if you teach me something, I can start to see a lot of other ways of doing it that you're not telling me. And that from day one, I said, no, I can't do that. I need to work it out myself. So if you show me how to do a one length haircut and you tell me to keep the scissors this way or invert them to create a really perfection, I just think that, then I start thinking about a lot of other things. But I'm like, but the hair gets a trauma. The hair will flick if you angle a little bit. I have all these thoughts in my head coming up all the time. And so going back to what you're saying, I think, yes, Italian women, they have taught me a lot when I was working in the salon and in the academy. To the point they were quite aggressive sometimes.
Yeah.
So you will have a brush in your hands and they're like, oh, give me that brush, like that.
Yeah. I've
I was like,
experienced that.
they would go like, let me show you how to do it, little boy,
Yeah.
and they would take
Yeah.
the brush, they would make that fringe like, lots of volume and beauty. This is how you do it, okay? Next time, I'm like, yes, no problem, I'll do it.
Yeah.
So I've started from the actual style of a woman, what they like, you know what I mean? It's not about cutting at one length or doing a scissors over comb, that was the most important thing, is suitability, and balance. So there is something about proportions, graduations of color, choice of color, combination of color, structure and shape that is always difficult for some people to combine. But if you have a experience, and if you work with the right mentor or with the right people, like Angelo Seminara, Trevor Sorbie, to name just a few, there's so many amazing hair artists in the world. Then you learn that quick, I think. And that's what people need from the beginning, I think, especially young students, is the combination of all those elements and know how. It's like cooking, right? If you put less salt, then you put some vinegar in there to make it more acidic, or you fry a little bit longer, you boil a little bit less, you make it hard or soft. It's the same.
Yeah.
It's almost like chemistry, isn't it? Right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great analogy.
I don't know if yeah.
No, I was just going to ask you about, the importance of having a mentor. You've mentioned the word mentor several times. We've talked about Trevor a little bit and how he was one of your mentors. How important is that, not just for you, but for anybody in developing their career, to find somebody that becomes their mentor, someone that influences them and that they, follow in their steps to whatever degree?
Well, one of the things that I've learned from Trevor is not to copy other people always, but I already kind of always had that in my head. And I think that to a point is kind of wrong, actually, because I think anyone that is young and starting something, a career in any areas, it's very important to actually copy, But at the end of the copy, you have to find yourself too. And develop yourself, and I think that's important, right? Because it's a learning curve, I think that's really important. But to have a mentor, I think is definitely the key, because it's so important to have someone that is guiding you, and it will just make sure that you go in the right direction. But to find a mentor is not easy
Yeah, exactly.
because how I'm going to find a mentor.
Mm,
So you can only find a mentor to reading, researching, watching stuff around,
mm,
surfing
yeah.
online and stuff. And when you find someone that actually captures your attention, makes you feel good about watching something, or
Mm,
makes you feel good about the aesthetics of that person and about all of this, then you know who your mentor could be, and that's when you go and ask, or you write to this person, For example,
mm,
I have lots of really young hairdressers. They call me, for example, from Mexico, from like Italy, from France, and my dream is to work with you. Of course, I can't do it to everyone because
mm,
otherwise it would be like too many people. But sometimes when I feel like someone is the right, that really needs that, and I can feel that they have something, I try and help people. Like
mm.
obviously I don't work in the salon, every day, so it's very hard to have everybody. I will have everybody. Like Trevor had me. I think
Mm, mm.
it's very rare you find people that they're really, really, really talented. Like, I
Yeah,
think maybe in 100 you find one, you know.
yeah. And the difference is as well now compared to 20 years ago, 30 years ago, whenever it was when you first arrived in London. The difference now is with technology. I mean, in an ideal situation, you want to have a mentor that you can work with, that you have a relationship with, that can, advise you, help you, show you how to do stuff. But even if you don't have that sort of relationship, you can still have a mentor online, someone who someone whose work you admire, that you follow everything they do, that you look at their Instagram, you look at every photograph they post, you look at their videos, you attend their classes online, whatever. So you can still do that, can't you? It's still it's better than being sort of lost. It's good to have someone who you follow, who you admire as your mentor. And you were very lucky to have you know some great mentors in your life, right from your first barbershop guy
Yes.
to, Trevor Sorbie and then other people.
A
Yeah.
mentor in life is not necessarily about what you do, and it's
Hmm.
not just about hairdressing. It could be also that you have more than one mentor. For
Mm.
example, one of I can call him my mentor or inspiration is David Attenborough. Another one is
Yeah.
Leonardo da Vinci. So
Yes.
when you
Yeah.
start, because I think the world is not just made out of materialistic stuff. It's made of also of like spirituality. It's made out of a lot of other things that I think someone needs to absorb, and that's when you become, I think, really good at something. That it's not
Mm.
just like looking straight like that. You need to look a bit more wider than that, I think. And
Yeah.
me loving nature, so David Attenborough, loving art and science and all this stuff, Leonardo da Vinci, and finding someone like Trevor, that is helped me a lot in my career, because I see things in a different way, I think
Yeah.
that's all I wanted to say. Yeah.
And that's a really good example, actually, because obviously you work with Trevor, you never work with Leonardo da Vinci, but he can still be
Yeah.
a mentor in some other way. I don't know if you've met David Attenborough or ever, worked with him, but they can still mentor you just by their presence and their example of what they've achieved in their life. So yeah, it's a good
Absolutely.
point. Um,
Yeah.
I just want to ask you about your work, and it's really difficult to pigeonhole your work because, on one hand, I know that you don't have a salon at the moment, and we'll talk about that later. But you're a hairdresser who can work in a salon. Um, you're a hairdresser who can do editorial work for fashion shows, fashion magazines. But then you're also this hairdresser that produces pure art, and there's very, very few hairdressers that do that. And you've got a lot of awards for the work that you do, and the creativity that you produce is just off the scale. And it's like what you said before. Trevor said to you, don't copy, always be original. And there's very few people that are ever actually able to do that. But when you look at your catalogue of work that you've done, all the awards that you've won, British Hairdressing Awards and AIPP and all this sort of stuff, there's so much originality there. You have a incredible ability to be off the wall in your creativity. You do stuff that you've never seen before. Very, very few people are able to do that, but you will year after year bring out photographs, bring out collections of stunning work, and people just sit there and look at it and go, "Oh my God." How do you describe that work? What category do you put it in? Do you call it avant-garde? Do you call it fantasy? Like, what do you call it? Because I don't think any word gives it justice. So I'm just curious about how you define it.
I think it's much deeper than that. I think it's something that you get affected as a child, and something that maybe you're missing and you're replacing. Sometimes for me, what we do, and especially artists in every areas, is there's a lot of psychology involved. And for example, the fact of who is Paganini? Paganini, the musician.
Yes.
Paganini
Yeah.
was famous. He would never repeat. He would just do one song and that's it. He would never do it again. So for me, I like to believe in that too. But not because I also get bored, with something that really, really quick. And reflecting back in my past when I was a child, I used to like to paint, for example, but I have never kept one paint. I would do a paint and then I will give it to someone as a gift.
Okay.
That was in fact, I never had a paint. So, and I used to love to paint. I used to have to paint every day, pictures and frames and things, and I would give away to someone as a present. And I think with my work, if you could describe it more like, imagine you have this kind of bird, yeah, that is flying around collecting little bits, like some stuff, and start to create this nest, right? I always try and describe it in this way because it's quite a beautiful way also that, you build this nest and that's your base, then you have obviously your eggs that you're going to depose in there. And these eggs, they're your ideas, but it doesn't mean that they are ready, the ideas. The ideas, they're always kind of fermenting, and they need time. You can't, sometimes you have an idea, but it's not the right time to do it. You have to wait maybe a year or two because it's just an idea or a thought, an initial thought. Initial thought and an idea or a final idea is very different. So lots of people, they have initial thoughts and they just go for it and they throw it in there. I will never do that because for me it's not completed, and I can feel it and I can understand that aesthetics doesn't work like that. For me, it needs to be absolutely completed where you are happy. And also, I think it's important to leave something that is not finished. I think for the human brain, it's very, very important to see when, for example, even a building or a room or an area that is a little bit unfinished or a bit broken, there needs to be more work done. That gives the human being the hope that there is space for growth. So it's a very pleasant thing. So the looks that I do sometimes, I don't know if you notice, there is always something unfinished, which I like to think. Otherwise, there was a time where I was making it too perfect. And I think when you make something too perfect, it can become very, very heavy, very ugly too sometimes. It's not beautiful, I don't think. So ideas, they come from everywhere, of course. And by collecting all these things, there will be a time where your eggs, they're gonna, just turn into like birds, they're gonna fly away. And that's when the time is. So it's about timing, and it's about editing and storing. So you have to store your ideas. I always carry a little booklet with me or a voice recorder or pictures. I've got millions of pictures. I photograph stuff that I don't even remember, to be honest, sometimes. I need an external memory to remember all this. I think it's important that you have one thing for what we do, and that is called curiosity. If you don't have a curiosity, you're not that person that you are describing at the moment, because everything comes out of curiosity, I think. Because if you're not curious, it means that you don't want to learn, you're not interested, right? So I'm always curious about everything. It could be food, architecture, fashion, cars, nature, everything. I need to know, I need to learn. And I think it's about that too. So
So
it's not
that's the
just about
seed
my
of
job. If
yeah.
it was just hairdressing, I would have dropped it so long ago. I
Mm,
love cooking. I love doing everything. I even plant trees sometimes. I do stuff
mm,
that maybe a lot of hairdressers don't do. They just stick to that every day. And
mm.
for me, hairdressing is not just about hair. It's about more than that.
Yeah.
You know.
So I know you don't have a salon at the moment, and you may have one again in the future, but you in this time period at the moment you don't have a salon. I just want to ask you about that side of being a hairdresser. Do you
Yeah.
enjoy that side of it? Do you enjoy being a stylist in the salon with, 7, 8, 9 clients booked in for the day? Is that a part of the industry that you still enjoy doing?
Well, I think I did. I don't know if today I still. You see, the salon. I feel that it's not enough for me. I don't know
Hmm.
how to explain this, and because you have to always do the ordinary in there. Like the everyday color, everyday haircut. You can't go too far. Sometimes,
Mm.
even
Yeah.
though I try, some of my clients, I
Mm.
go there. But I think what I like about the salon is the team, to be with the team and to just have fun, because you're like almost in an orchestra, making music. If
Yeah.
you are in the salon with your heart, in that day.
Yeah.
Uh, if you ask me, would you be in the salon every day, 300 days a year or something? I would probably say no,
Mm.
because I just I feel like I want to do photography, videos and
Sure.
um,
Yeah.
editorial. I like to do other things, education.
Mm.
I just like to vary my work, my day,
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
But I did work in the salon for many years too, where I
Mm.
was fully booked for like maybe 15 years solid,
Mm.
just
Yeah.
boom, 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 just
Yeah.
like clients
I
after
get that.
another.
Yeah. Exactly. What about the editorial work side of things? Do you find time to still do editorial work and the shows?
Yes, I do. Yeah, yeah. I love doing editorial work. Yeah. I also like to work with product companies in
Mm.
designing new products. My aim in the future is to do some really, really interesting products. That they're a bit different of what we have now on the
Hmm.
market. I know it's hard, but I actually love working with chemists too, because testing, and finding ingredients and creating
Mm.
fragrances and packaging and marketing. I love that part too. I find it so incredibly creative. And
Mm. Yeah.
I'm
Exactly.
growing in that area a lot in the last few years. I worked with brands where I've helped them a lot to grow and stuff. And that's my aim now. I'm working with a new brand, Italian brand, Kimon, and I'm just loving it. It's great because there's a lot of other things to do. There's not what you do every day. But then if Nick
Mm.
Knight comes and says, "Oh, let's do Vogue shoot or whatever," then I get excited and I go and do it that too.
Yeah.
Yeah, with the
Yeah.
fashion shows, I'm doing less and less fashion shows. I like to do fashion shows when they're like super creative, and we can do something more conceptual,
Mm.
to do a fashion show just to like and comb some hair, just like that.
Mm.
I find it a little bit frustrating sometimes because I can see possibility of even improving it. But of course, it's fashion, and fashion you're working with
Mm.
a team, and the team together collectively we decide what is the final look, and I think that's also another art form that is
Mm.
completely different,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. Yeah.
important.
Yeah, exactly. It is, and it is still an art form, but you're more of an individual, are you, as opposed to someone who can collaborate on an idea. You're more, I've got this idea myself, and I need to turn it into reality. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, I mean, I think I know lots of incredible hairdressers, to be honest, that they're like so
Mm.
inspiring, like people like Eugene Sullivan or like,
Mm.
there's like so many talented. I know you can count them, maybe in two hands. It's not
Mm.
like,
Yeah,
people that
yeah.
comes up with new stuff,
Mm.
they're very innovative. And But I think the younger generations, like when I'm talking about 20, I think they're going to be incredible. because they have also now this kind of new supplement. It's almost like a, completely new era is coming, and it's AI. And I think AI, a lot of people think it's a bad thing, but I think it's a great thing because AI got inspired by us, by people like Vidal, like by the past, Aldo Coppola, and all these people, because that's what the content is whatever is in being created is kind of mixed together, and you have AI that has all the solutions for you. But I think that is going to re-inspire us back, to do even better what we have done. So it's almost like, hey, you did this 50 years ago or yesterday. Now AI is taking that, is making it like this. What do you think? And you're like, oh wow, I can't do that. All right, that's a challenge. Let's try and do that because I think that's great. I don't see, obviously, I don't like when AI takes advantage of things and if it becomes in a way violent, like in a way that he can put people under risk, that stuff. I don't know if I like it, but I think it's easy to control these days. So it's great inspiration too.
Let me ask you a few things about. I'm curious about how you will answer this question. How do you define beauty?
Yeah, I think beauty, it has a monitor, and this monitor is monitoring all the elements. Okay, and there is kind of a fit, that has to work, and that is based on individually the experience of an individual, how you perceive aesthetics, how you perceive nature, how you perceive sound, how you perceive visual stuff, and I think today everyone has an opinion. Of course, you can't describe beauty that, something might be beautiful for you might not be beautiful for me. But at the same time, in a majority of the cases, for me, beauty is not perfection either. For me, beauty doesn't have to be necessarily something perfect. Well, a lot of people think that is beautiful. For me, beauty is something that gives you and triggers something inside of you that makes you excited, that makes you give butterflies in the stomach. That's for me, that's beauty.
Okay. What about suitability? Very similar word in a salon context. Like you look at a client and they want something, and you look at them and you go, "Do you know what? That's not going to suit you." Or the opposite, you go, "This would really suit you." I think a lot of people struggle with understanding what is the right thing to put on somebody. We touched on a few things before when you were talking about the Italian ladies would show you and teach you how to do stuff, but also inspiring you about how a woman feels and what beauty is and maybe what suitability is and maybe what taste is. I'm just, you've got such a good mind for all this stuff. I'm just curious about how you would define that word suitability with a client.
Well, suitability is something that already exists or something that needs to be created, first of all. It doesn't just, otherwise it's nothing. So, for example, let's talk about our crafts in the salon. How do I make something suitable for someone? You see, the first thing that I do, I have seen hairdressers bringing a new client from the assistant is bringing a new client on the chair. The hairdresser hasn't seen that client walking, but the client was on the chair, and the hairdresser goes to the assistant. Thank you. The assistant goes and he stays with the client, but he's never seen this client standing. And they start doing a consultation. And I'm like, how can you do that? I can never do that. So what that means, for example, I need to see someone moving. I need to see someone talking. I need to see the proportion of their body, the shoulders, the neck, the jewels, the forehead, the eyes, the distance of the eyes, the size of the lips. So for me, it's all about proportion, and suitability is about proportion. You know what I mean? But obviously you can add other attributes to suitability. You can make someone look a bit more gothic, or more like evil, or more like beautiful, or more sweet, or more angelic.
Mm.
But then there is things, the elements that you bring, for example, right? So maybe you want to make a bit higher, or a bit lower, or, a bit longer, or a bit shorter. I think for me, suitability is about proportions, and about but not just proportion within the face, but also it needs to suit the personality too. Sometimes that's what I'm talking about, creating
Yes.
sometimes a character.
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
had
Totally.
clients that they went to me, do what you want, and I was like, okay, I did what I wanted, and at the end they were shocked. They're like, what have you done to me?
What I wanted.
Sorry, yeah, I did what you asked me to do. But I
Yeah.
also had clients that they're like crying at the end and hug
Yeah.
me, and they're like, "Oh my God, you changed my life."
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Or I
Yeah.
had clients that were like, "Hey, this is a big check. Go on holiday in Ireland and go and
Yeah.
drink Guinness all month. Here you go,
Yeah.
because you changed my life."
Yeah.
Depends, I think. But
There's an
suitability is the key.
yeah. Yes. There's an expression.
Suitability is the key.
Definitely. There's an expression that I sometimes use, you may be familiar with it, and it is that sometimes people look, but they don't see. And you just gave a great example of that. How you want to see a client standing up, you want to see them moving. And it's not like in the salon, you go, now stand up and sashay down there and do a little spin and come back. But you are looking at people all the time. Your computer is processing all this information. Whereas other people might be looking at the same thing, but they don't see what you see. And that's such an
Yeah.
important thing to get through to people, isn't it? That, when they talk about consultations and suitability and all that sort of stuff, you mentioned the word before about curiosity. It's like an understanding the personality. There's so many little ingredients that go into making this work. And yeah, I just love your whole, thought process about that.
I'm very selfish when it comes to hairdressing. What that means.
Mm.
Let me explain
Okay.
when I wake up in the morning, and let's say when I used to work in Trevor Salon in Covent Garden in Flora Street. So
Yeah.
I would wake up, I will have my espresso. So the espresso will kick in my head straight away, wakes me up.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
from that moment until I get to the door of the salon, I wasn't thinking anything else rather than what am I going to do today to someone's hair? But not
Mm.
to make them happy, to make me happy. That was very
Yeah. Yeah.
selfish.
Okay.
And
Yeah. Yeah. It
I admit
is. Yeah. Yeah.
I am like that.
Yeah.
But that is what made me, learn, because I was like, today I want to try a square layer with a bit of a round graduation and maybe some
Mm.
texture. And I'm going to use 3, 4 products. And then I want to color the ends that they look a little bit iridescent or something. And why is that? Because I've never done that before.
Yeah.
And that is what I'm interested in. And I always tell my students or the people, I say, look, guys, if
Yeah.
you can learn one thing a day, only one,
Mm. Mm.
guess how many things you learn in a year? 360.
Mm.
That's a lot. Some
Exactly.
people,
Exactly. Yeah.
they
Yeah.
work in the salon without saying anything bad about anyone, because we all need to make a living, and
Mm.
I know it's an art form, but it's also a job, and people makes their living. But at the same
Mm.
time, some people, they only do 5, 6 hairstyles. That's it, and they keep doing that because that's
Yeah.
what their
Exactly.
clients want at the end.
Yeah.
In that
Yeah.
area, in that village, that's the trend for
Mm.
forever
Mm.
until like they're like,
Mm.
For me, it's not about that. It's about stepping out of your comfort zone, stepping out of the box. Try
Mm.
and do something different. Maybe risking to lose the clients too, because you know what? Like some clients, they might not like what you do. But if
Mm.
you don't take the risk, how can you gain other clients? Because if you take the risk and you do
Mm.
something amazing, that client will be noticed, and
Mm.
she will bring you more clients to you because they're like, "Oh,
Yeah.
where did you do that? I've never seen that." Oh, I want that.
Mm. Mm.
That's it.
Does fashion inspire you?
very much. It inspires me a lot from day one when I started to get into fashion. We used to do at least 50 shows a year, 50 fashion shows a year.
Mm.
I was working a lot with Eugene Soliman on his team as I was growing up in hairdressing, and I've done for many, many years. And it was so inspiring, fashion, because through the fashion designer's eyes, and vision, you can actually bring that into hair also. It's not just about fashion. It's
Mm.
about aesthetics again. It's about feeling. It's about design. And I think fashion designers are like incredible. I think they're like essential. I would
Mm.
say.
Is
Otherwise, we
it?
always have the same thing.
Yeah, yeah. Is there any particular designer that inspires you?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, there is so many. Like I like Margiela. I like
Mm.
uh, Yamamoto, Yoji Yamamoto,
Mm.
Izumiyaki. Absolutely, I love it because they have developed techniques and ways of transforming the fabrics. They make them like Missoni. I mean, I've worked for probably all the designers that there is out there,
Mm.
from Louis Vuitton to Victor Rolf to like just name it, Chanel, everybody. And
Yeah.
it's been such inspiration for me because, they look at things in a different angle completely. And also, it's so
Yeah.
exciting to work on the shows, to
Mm.
go and do the fashion shows. Not so exciting when you have to wake up at 3 in the morning, though, to go,
Mm.
and the call time is at 6. That's less exciting.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's
Exactly.
fun, though.
Okay. Let me just ask you about your role with product companies, because I know you were very strongly associated with Devanus for years, and then more recently Goldwell, and now Kimon. What I wanted to ask you about is when you work as a sort of a global ambassador for each of those brands, and each of those brands are quite different. I'm curious about the influence that they have on you, not just the influence that you have on them, but like, for example, Davanos is very much about nature and, environment and all that sort of stuff. That's sort of in their DNA. And I know that you're like that too. And I'm just curious to find out what came first. Were you already like that, or was it your relationship with Devanus that made you become more aware of nature and environmental things?
Well, I have to say that they're not really about nature. I want to be very clear on this. I think they're
Okay.
a sustainable company because they think about sustainability, about pollution and all of this. I think
Yeah.
that's what they really did, and they're doing it always, and they care about the environment. I mean, I can think of other brands that are super natural, completely natural when I talk about
Mm.
the product in itself. But as you know, it's very difficult to create products that are 100% natural because
Yeah.
kind of, I don't know if the formulas works. It's something
Mm.
about it. You need to have a chemist involved.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, to create great
Mm.
results in terms of holding the hair shine, all this stuff. Nature
Mm.
gives you, I don't know, a good percentage of like uh, goodness that you can create with a product. But
Mm.
I don't know if you can do everything with just nature. You know what I mean? So
Mm.
I've worked with, like you said, with many brands, including L'Oreal, Well, and all kind of different brands. And I think in general, the product world is phenomenal now. What we can do worldwide, I mean, there's so many great companies, but I just feel like a lot of people they're just copying each other. You know what I mean?
Mm.
And some people they have patented formulas that they can't share. Of course, they keep it to themselves because they're patented.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
if I had the possibility, I would like to have everything patented. They think they have invented for the products for the right reason, for the environment too, if it's possible, when it's possible. It's not
Mm.
always possible, I don't think,
Mm.
to get a great result without, mixing the
Yeah.
two. It's like it's nature and science for me. And
Yeah.
this is what I
Exactly.
like
Yeah.
about Ken.
Mm.
The brand I'm working now is about nature and science, and that's
Mm.
something really interesting. In fact, it's their logo. You know, you can see the leaf, and you know.
Yeah. I was looking at it beforehand, before we got on this call. Listen, we need to wrap up in a minute, but I want to ask you a couple of things. One of them is about
Yes,
awards. You have got
yes.
like more awards than you can point a stick at. You know, you have a lot of awards for years. How important are awards to you?
That's a good question actually, because I
Do
don't
they?
go in to win an awards. I've never done that. I
Hmm,
mean, I don't participate to awards. Sometimes you get nominated, or let's say my office, you know, my people, they just say, oh, why don't you send this collection to this IPP or whatever, you know, or they ask me, Angelo, do you send your IPP? For me, it's like I've won, yes, many awards, and I think I've been lucky, maybe. Don't you think?
I don't think it's luck, mate.
Maybe.
I mean, I've looked at your work over the years, and I'd call it
I
a
think
lot of
there's so
things,
many
but lucky
hairdressers.
isn't one of them.
I
um,
think there's a lot of hairdressers who should win awards and they don't, and I
yeah.
feel sad for them.
Yes, that's
Like,
true too.
I
That
think
is
the
true too.
problem. Let me
Yes.
tell you what I really believe for the award. I believe that I mean this. I think there's
Mm,
so many people that they should win and they don't, and the reason why is because the lack of judgment. I think
mm,
personally, if you have too many judges in the competition, the risk it's impossible to have all good judges. You know what I mean? I mean,
mhm.
so for me,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
about really it should be about la creme
Mm,
of judges. They don't have
mm.
nothing to do with the nominees. You know, or no jealousy, no envy, no nothing.
Yeah, yeah,
If
yeah.
you have a panel of judges, they don't really know how to judge. You know, and it
Mm.
happens. I've seen it in the past. So I think I've been lucky. You know, I think I'm lucky to win.
Well, you've been very lucky a
Maybe
lot, Len.
I'm lucky.
So, okay. I
I don't think I'm that good. If I thought I was good, I would probably stop hairdressing and I would move on. I don't want to. I
okay.
want to learn more. You know, I'm always. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I've really enjoyed our conversation, and I enjoy your thought process because I think that when you're a young hairdresser, you're always looking at someone's hands to learn what they do. What they do is different and better than you. But as you get older, you realize that so much of what is making that person special is what's going on in here. It's how they think. And understanding how people think is, I think, where the real magic is. You know, you use that word curiosity. It's you're curious about, you think about these things, and that's incredibly important. I want to, before we wrap up, there's a couple of things just want to mention. One of them was, I was on your website today and I was looking, at all the stuff on there, and I was looking at a video that you've done, and it just relates to what I just said, actually, that your video on there, it's called Hair Everywhere 3.0. And
Yeah.
I loved it. And because you're talking over the background in the video and you say some wonderful things, like there's some really, again, what I'm just talking about, you're talking about beauty, you're talking about how you think, you're talking about art, you're talking about inspiration. And so I would really recommend
Yeah.
everyone listening this to go and check that out. And just one last thing I want to ask you is if you weren't a hairdresser, what would you do? Because I know you have all these other things going on. So if hairdressing was not something you were going to do anymore, what direction would you be pulled in?
I would be part-time architect, and the other
Okay.
half I would be a chef.
Okay. So still very, very creative.
Cooking.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
I think my cooking is better than the hairdressing I do. Much better.
Wow.
I like
Okay.
to
Well,
cook when no one knows. I could open my own program of cooking if I want. I love
yeah.
cooking because maybe because I'm
Fantastic.
Italian, you know.
Yeah.
Also, what I
Exactly.
like to do, you have seen, I work in a lot of museums around the world. I don't know if you've seen
Yes.
that work that I do.
Yes, I saw
Maybe
all
you
that.
have
Yeah. Yeah.
in museums like Frida Kahlo in Mexico. I've created all the hair for Frida Kahlo Museum. And some people don't know that because I don't expose much that. And I worked for
Yeah.
the Biennale of Architecture and Art in Venice, different installations. And I think for me, that's one of my favorite things I'm doing at the moment. I'm preparing now 2 new exhibitions, one for China, one for Japan next year. And this is really what excites me because I can work with my team. I have a very young team and they love doing it more than me, actually. And it's great to see that we work as a team, and we just love it. It's fun.
Yeah, no, look, I only knew all that stuff because I was doing research before our podcast today, and I spent a fair bit of time digging around on your website and just, looking at different stuff that you've done. And so it really opened up my eyes as to just how many things you do, because you don't talk about it much. You're quite humble about all this stuff, and that's that's what makes you who you are. Let me ask you, where can people connect with you? Where can they find out more about you on Instagram or other social media channels?
Angelo Seminara, hair artist. That I use that, as my platform. Then I've got different ones for different. I've created something that is called Solage. It's a new way of coloring hair that we're going to relaunch now in March.
Yeah.
Then I've created something that is called the imprinter that allows you to print on hair. And that is something that I'm going to relaunch also very soon. And we call that the color of the future because it's something that I'm doing that is incredible with the colors. And that is going to be connected to a lot of education that we're going to start creating. In fact, at the moment, we're also recruiting in the brand where I'm working with Kemon. Kemon is actually one of my first brands that I worked when I was a kid. It's my very. They put me on the stage first.
Right.
Yeah, and I
fantastic.
I'm keeping asking them, can I look at some video when I was a kid? Because apparently I didn't talk on the stage. I was just doing hair, and I would get standing ovation. It was funny.
Yeah. Good on you. Okay, well, listen, I will put that link on the website and in the show notes for today's podcast so people can check all that stuff out. So if you're listening to this podcast with Angelo Seminara and have enjoyed it, do me a favor and share it with other people who would also benefit from listening to it. And don't forget to subscribe and leave us a rating and review on the Apple Podcast app. So before we go, Angelo, I just want to thank you for sharing so openly and honestly and putting the time aside, to inspire everyone who's been listening. I've certainly got a lot from it, and I know that they would have too. So thank you for being on this week's episode of the Grow My Salon
Thank you very much.
Podcast. Cheers. Thanks.